administration. They could have framed a better question paper, maybe tougher one, difficult one. That's See, if they frame a tough question paper which challenge your abilities or want expects from you guys, more analysis, I'm sure most of you will do it really well. But these kind of question papers, just to eliminate people something, na, it's not good. Hopefully, the coming years they would make better questions and better papers. So only the genuine and hardworking and serious aspirants will make it into the mains level. So having said this, one thing we have to be very clear is that irrespective of the result, what most of the students do, especially in our Hyderabad, tendency is to skip the mains phase of the preparation. Is something which is totally not warranted. As I always say, mains is much more deeper, much more intense and analytical way of preparing for this examination. Unless we get exposed to that quality of preparation, which is mains quality of preparation, we can't assure that we are prepared for prelims examination. So there is something very, very important. So as I've been telling, start writing answers. And writing also is not for the sake of formality. Write intensely. If you are somebody who is clearing the examination, you have to write at least 1 hour daily you have to spend on answer writing. And every Sunday should be like a proper UPSC Sunday, wherein you have to write minimum 2 tests: morning one, 9 to 12, afternoon one, 2 to 5. So, because let me tell you, some of you may have already written your mains, but if you haven't written your mains, especially that mains phase of the examination, when you are writing your test, it is so much physically and mentally taxing that some people would feel like giving up while they are writing the exam itself. It is really grueling, and because of that, it's easy to say that it's a mind game, and we end up writing dumb answers even for those questions which you are very familiar, those concepts which you are very familiar with. This happens because of the levels of stress we will be under. We end up writing very bad answers, and when you come out you will realize that I would have written a much better answer had I been given an opportunity to write it without pressure or not under pressure. So what's one way of ensuring that you are actually not under pressure and you approach every single question in the question paper with proper mindset and in a balanced manner? It is to practice. You do the same thing which will happen on that particular day of mains examination 40 times. You write 40 tests. 40 into 3, 120 hours of practice for a 3-hour test will ensure that you are fully prepared. Then you will not face that stress when you are actually writing the examination. When you are actually writing the examination, you won't have that stress because you have gone through the all this necessary stress previously, isn't it? People say this popular quote: "Sweat more in the field, so you will bleed less in the war." Then, when you are writing the test, you will feel like it's any other test, and like the test which you practice, wherein you write good quality answers, the same thing will also get replicated in your original answers in the test. This is what I suggest. Same thing is very much applicable to those students who may not be doing the examination. See, at the end of the day, if you want to ensure that you have to see your rank in the list, next year you have to go through the same process, isn't it? Why not undergo it right now? So next year it is assured that your rank will be in the top 100. Just assume that you are writing your mains this time and do everything somebody preparing for mains does. You know what students do? They say I am not done with my world history. I am not done with my world geography. My post independent Indian consolidation is pending. In ethics, I have 4 chapters pending. These are because I talked to so many students, I got used to these things. And next 1.5 month, at a leisure pace, every day they'll just read for just 5-6 hours. Some of them won't do that also. 5-6 hours till November 15, November 20, they'll be wasting time. And suddenly they'll realize, okay, as we are in the main phase of preparation, we also have to write tests. And then they would even think of writing tests. Then writing tests is the next level. Many of them won't do that also. So what I'm trying to suggest, start writing immediately. Get into that sprint mode. Don't wait. Start writing immediately. If you're somebody going for mains, what I suggest, first 10 days of your preparation, maybe most of the students actually will take a break this week. Next 10 days, write 10 tests every day, like a sprint. That will set the proper tone for your preparation. You will realize, okay, this is the quality of answers I am writing now. Then I have only 80 days left. There is a lot for me to work. I have to work a lot. I have to work on improve on my answer writing. This is high time now. I stop thinking about reading more and more. I have already read enough. What did I do? What did you guys do? You have done a lot of reading in your prelims phase, right? So what happened to all that knowledge? That will definitely come when you put pen on the paper. That knowledge will automatically come out. So you have to tell yourself strongly that at some point of time I have to stop myself. I have to stop at some point of time. This accumulating, passively accumulating lot of information or knowledge which is not at all used. No, you have to use the knowledge. Otherwise, what's the point of gaining so much knowledge, right? Right? So do this. You are somebody writing mains or do this immediately. From tomorrow, start taking 10 tests on daily basis. Many tests are available in the market free of cost. Take any random paper, GS 1, 2, 3, 4, GS 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 cycles of 4 tests. That will, then you will realize, okay, this is the reality. All these days I'm pretending myself that I'm studying well, but there are a lot of, when it comes to putting pen on the paper, I'm facing all these issues. So this is high time. I have to do something concrete. This is happening, ma. So yes, do this. And coming to other aspect, as I've already told, every Sunday should be UPSC Sunday, just like the same thing I've told for prelims phase. Saturdays, take an essay test. Ensure that you definitely write an essay without fail. If you don't have time for 2 essays, at least write 1 essays. If you can really afford time to write 2 essays, start your Saturdays early. Start your day early. Let's make it say 7 o'clock, something like that. Sit at 7:30, have breakfast and sit at 7:30. 7:30 to 10:30, write 2 essays at one go. Then see your quality. Observe how good answers you are writing. So all the things I am suggesting are equally applicable whether you are writing mains or not writing. Sunday, 2 full-length tests. Saturday, yes, 2 tests. Now, I'll make some other video for those who are writing mains because I don't know if, how many of you are confident this time you are writing mains? Anybody here? Sai? CSAT. I don't know, this CSAT is literally, for many students. Anybody else? Yeah, you're writing. So, sorry? Okay, good. Congratulations. So let me confine to the present uh, mandate of the present session. So most of the things you already know what I'll be discussing. It's just to reinforce your thought process by showing some real-time examples so you will better understand how or what kind of answers are supposed to be written during the examination. Sharing the screen, please note. Yeah, first thing first. This is a very basic thing, very fundamental thing, but students end up ignoring. Reading the question 5 times. Many people, many times would have told you to do this. You also would have told to yourself that I have to read the question 5 times. But just at the very first reading or the second reading, we want to jump into writing an answer. Things will not work that way. If you're not even aware, or if you have not properly managed to understand the question, then what else we are going to write? Sometimes out of overconfidence, we tend to think that even one reading of question would suffice. No, it will not work that way. And don't think it as a waste of time. It's like you are having 10 to 11 minutes to write a 15 marker. It's totally fine even if you spend first 30 seconds in just analyzing the question, or even if you spend 45 seconds, that's totally fine. Because not properly understanding the question and writing up some irrelevant content is much better than writing content in only 8 minutes but writing the most relevant point. That is going to fetch you more marks. It's commonsensical, right? So this is something very basic. Even if you're a pro in answer writing, you are very good at answer writing. See, like yesterday also have evaluated one copy in AWP. One very serious aspirant who is consistently writing mains, he writes good answers, and he has not written a relevant answer to the question. At least one fourth of the answer got deviated from the demand of the question. Why this would have happened? This would have happened because maybe he could have been a little more careful in reading the question. So what I am trying to essentially suggest is this. First and foremost thing, read question 5 times. When you read question 5 times, you will understand the core theme of the question. Once you understand the core theme of the question, then what to do, how to build dimensions of the question is easy. That can be taken care. But yes, do this hereafter and tell yourself very firmly in an affirmative tone that whenever I am approaching a question hereafter, I'll read it 5 times. Okay? Yes. Now, yeah, read this question and tell me what is the theme of the question. Why not you read it 5 times? Because this is a workshop. Okay, hope it's done. Yes. You really read 5 times, or you felt it's an easy question? Though it's an easy question, sometimes we end up, I have seen some students even not writing an appropriate answer for this question. So what is the core theme? Core theme is easy to identify, right? It is something related to fake news. Question is on fake news. But it does happen sometimes that we will not even identify the core theme properly. Sometimes it happens. We end up identifying a wrong core theme. When identifying the wrong core theme, identifying core theme itself is compromised because certain statement based questions. See, this is easy. Now, if I give one more question, hardest thing in democracy is to get something done now whose price of inaction is decades away. Critically analyze the statement. Now, what is the core theme here? Hardest thing in democracy is to get something done now whose price of inaction is decades away. Critically analyze the statement. What is the core theme here? Yeah, these kind of questions also will be there, wherein it will be a little difficult for us to identify the core theme. When you read question 5 times, definitely it can give us some hints. Definitely it can give us some hints. This is a plain question. On single reading, you will get to know that what is the core theme. You can just start writing an answer within 45 seconds or within 30 seconds, you will start writing an answer. But when such a question which is slightly analytical or which requires you to apply more mind, if you really read it 5 times, that will give us a better hint on identifying the core theme. So I think, hope it's convinced now why we should read a question 5 times. Right? I still do not get the answer. What is the core theme? Hardest thing in democracy is to get something done now whose price of inaction is decades away. Yeah, Pankaj, what it could be? Core theme? Is it something with related to democracy or uh, huh? Hmm. Okay. So what kind of discussion we can bring as examples? Yeah, this debate on sustainable development, as simple as that. We are running after economic development, not taking seriously sustainable development. Why? Because electoral compulsions, electoral cycles. Every 5 years, somebody changes their power. So they are more interested in short-termism, ad hocism is the thing. So that will compromise on any kind of long-term planning. But still, that's not the reason for us to forego democracy. Democracy has got its own good things. Democracy has deliberation, it has debate, it has discussion, it has dissent, it has decentralization, it has devolution, it has all these things. So we should try to maximize the potential utility of the democracy, but should not meekly submit ourselves saying that democracy is not compatible to sustainable development. Democracy. This is one just theme, one just example. Likewise, yes, it is a possibility, and it is true that in democracy, especially with the first past post system, it's difficult to implement anything which is long term or anything which is sustainable nature. But yes, the same democratic tools or democratic instruments, if we can effectively utilize, can be used for driving the purpose of sustainable development. That is how we can take a stand and build an answer for that question. Okay. Yes. Anyways, next, we will focus on writing a good introduction. So make it a point that your introductions are simple, clear, specific, and also thought provoking. Should not be like a very bland, boring introduction. Because I'm starting to reading your answer from that. If you're not inspiring me in the very beginning lines, then there is a possibility that I may not want to read more. See, at the end of the day, somebody evaluating your copy is a human being. He has his own preconceived notions. He has his own judgments, isn't it? Somebody just by looking at the handwriting, they would think, "Arey yaar, such a boring thing. Now I have to evaluate the whole copy." And yours may be the last copy of the day he is evaluating. So he has only 10 minutes to evaluate your copy, or 15 minutes he want to leave. Then if your introduction sounds so cliche, so boring, nothing exciting, then he'll just give average score, okay, 4.5. But you have to grab his attention, right? And you want him to read your question thoroughly because you have included many good ideas, exciting ideas in your body, and you are concluding brilliantly, because for most of the students, good ideas come as they start writing answers. And that's often the reason we end up writing good points at the end. That starting problem is there for most of the students because we don't practice adequately. That is surely because of not having adequate writing practice. If you have adequate writing practice, prioritization of the ideas will come naturally. Prioritization of the ideas will come naturally if we are into answer writing practice. But if you are not regularly practicing writing of answers, you will have this. When you are putting pen on the paper, you are devoid of thoughts. You are struggling to get content. But only as you progress little more and more, then thoughts will start coming. But if that should not happen, you have to practice your writing of answers. As simple as that. Then, as I've said, it should be simple, it should be clear, it should be specific. These days, it has become a trend for most of the students. For every question introduction, they'll write something $5 trillion Indian economy, doubling of the farmer income, either in introduction or in conclusion. Why? Any question in economy, somebody would have told that you should have a framework. Having a framework means not that for every question you should write doubling of farm income, or every question you should write $5 trillion economy. For every question you should write about sustainable development goals to introduce or conclude. No, that's not the way. It should be specific to the demand of the question. Let's say the question is on agroforestry. For agroforestry, doubling of farm income or something is not relevant. A good introduction for agroforestry is maybe in a crisp manner telling what is agroforestry and telling what is percentage agroforestry in India, percentage contribution of agroforest to agri sector in India, and what is its revenue potential per acre, how much revenues can be enhanced if agroforestry is encouraged. These are the kind of things that would be specific to the demand of the question. A question on agriculture insurance, just in one line telling what is agriculture insurance and telling insurance penetration in India, or how much potential is there for insurance penetration in India, could be the right way to introduce. So what I'm essentially suggesting is that Don't write introduction for the sake of writing introductions. If you don't have anything, just write in one line and go to the body rather than writing something which is not related or relevant to the demand of the question. You got my point? Because at least, okay, you will save some time and space for you to pack with the most relevant content in the subsequent part of the answer. Don't do this mistake, right? So write an introduction and it should be simple, clear, specific, and thought provoking, right? Of course, includes facts, figures if necessary. Never write lengthy introductions. Never write lengthy introductions unless it's specifically asked in your question. For example, if question itself begin as, see here, here your introduction would be definitely lengthy as you have to address this. What do you understand by the term inclusive innovation? Question itself is asking you to explain the topic of inclusive innovation. It's totally fine even if you take 3/4 page, to write inclusive innovation and one example of inclusive innovation, that is accepted. Got my point? Otherwise, like yesterday also I'm evaluating one copy. Introduction is one whole page. Introduction one whole page, then when you will be left with time and space to write other actual answer. Don't do that. Control yourself. Sometimes you may think that I have got a very good point to tell myself and I'll write a lengthy introduction. No, don't do that. Control your horses and ensure that introduction maximum it should be 3/4. Half is perfect. Half page is perfect. Yes. Look here. A rapid, sustainable, and durable rural economic transformation is the need of the hour. In this context, identify various challenges in realizing of this vision. Suggest some innovative solutions to accomplish intended objectives. Question is something on rural transformation, economic transformation to be more specific. Here also, introduction can be slightly lengthy because you have to substantiate that statement in the question, isn't it? Beginning part of the statement, why it has to be rapid, why it has to be sustainable, why it has to be durable. You can substantiate that in the beginning itself. Some people also do this. They'll make it how to make it rapid, how to make rural economic transformation rapid, how to make rural economic transformation sustainable, how to make rural economic transformation durable also can be brought into the body, main body. But if you don't want to do that and you want to just address rural economic transformation, in the introductory paragraph itself, you can tell why we have to ensure that rural economic transformation happens in a rapid manner and why it should happen in a sustainable manner, why you have to enhance the durability. You can introduce. Here it's also accepted because the question itself is beginning with a statement, that to an elaborate statement, and the following prompts in the questions also are based on the first statement only. So it is totally acceptable even if you write a lengthy introduction like up to 3/4 page. Should have that knack of where to write a lengthy introduction and where not to write a lengthy introduction. Clear? Yes. Then, see, look, such a good introduction somebody has written. So, what do you understand by the concept of political economy? Do you agree with the view that in India, evidence based policy making takes a backseat whenever political economy asserts its role? Discuss. So, actually, the question is a debate between political economy and evidence based policy making. Look how simple introduction. Political economy approach deals with the political aspect of economic policy making so that the policy is not only economically efficient but also politically and socially acceptable. It could have been even more relevant had it been mentioned about sometimes it is perceived that political economy is contradicted with the ideals of evidence based policy making. Sometimes it is perceived that political economy is in contradiction with the ideals of evidence-based policy making. That's it. It could have been more relevant. Then next part of the answer will follow. But this introduction also is good. She has just managed to introduce what is political economy. It could have been more holistic, well-rounded introduction had it also been made a mention about evidence-based policy making. Even otherwise, it's a reasonably good introduction. One more thing. So what do you understand by the concept of middle income trap? What focus can contribute to this? What factors can contribute to this phenomenon in Indian economy? Suggest some measures to address this. You can see it here, right? So World Bank term mid income. So that good simple definition and that too in a proper manner. and a simple diagram representing it's a representation of middle income trap. See, aesthetically also it is looking very good, right? The examiner will get a good impression. Okay, nice introduction, good diagram to explain the concept of middle income trap. You will definitely get good scores. And even if the body gets compromised, actually this question I have evaluated myself. So the factors responsible was not addressed that well. Still, I would have given good score for this because the way it was introduced, yeah, it could have made a good answer. So work on the reductions very seriously hereafter. Do this practice because in answer writing sessions, like what I suggest students is in the first few sessions, one whole day, I'll be usually encouraging students to write only introductions for 1 hour, 10 introductions. If you practice 10 introductions or 11 or maybe 20 introductions in 1 hour time, hereafter, whenever you are writing introduction, you will have that in your mind. Okay, as I have practiced so many introductions, so now I know how to introduce and how to introduce in a relevant way. So instill that strongly in your mind hereafter. Whenever you are reading any article in the newspaper, you are reading anything from your current affairs, somebody would have introduced it to you, isn't it? They would have written some introductory lines. Observe them. All these days you are reading it, you may be reading it, but you have not paid attention to reading it because you are busy, you want to quickly jump to the content. No, it's not correct. Especially in the textbooks, not one or other textbooks, in all the textbooks, they'll write very good inductions. Especially the people who are reading anthropology, like optional subjects, because I am anthropology guy, they write very good inductions. You know what the tendency of the students is? They think that reading introduction is waste of time. Let's say there is a topic, say parochialization. They'll skip first 2-3 paragraphs. They'll directly go into reading what is parochialization. I know most of the students do this. If you don't understand the tone, if you don't understand the purpose, and directly you want to go and read parochialization, that will never complete your understanding. People always think how to establish interlinkages between topics, how to establish connections between topics. Somebody else has already established the connections and he has written it in the introduction and conclusion. You did not read it because you're obsessed only about reading the body of the content from the textbook you're reading or whatever it is. How many of you have already done this? Whenever you are reading a textbook, skipping of introductions and conclusions and just reading the content. Most of you would do this, I know. So if you're already doing this, please do this. Don't do this practice. Get away from it immediately. Read those introductions and conclusions also properly. They make lot of sense. Somebody has written it. They would want to convey something. They would want to leave their mark when they are writing their introduction or conclusion. Get into that. So this idea of establishing connections would come naturally when you do that. This is what I'm trying to suggest. You got my point? Yes. Then the most important component of answer writing where majority of the students struggle is identifying relevant dimensions. This is the real game. Identifying all the relevant dimensions in the question is very, very important. It is very fundamental to get good scores. The moment you complete reading the question, first thing that should come in your mind is thinking about all possible major dimensions of the topic. So what is a dimension like? Dimension is nothing but the heading you want to keep. It is nothing but the heading you want to keep. After the introduction, after the introduction, rest of the answer will be driven by this dimensions or the headings. But if you don't even properly identify the heading, relevant headings, nothing but relevant dimensions, and that is sure shot, you are deviating from the demand of the question. The problem is this: students won't invest their time in the beginning of the question in identifying the dimension. You're supposed to spend time in the beginning of the question itself. Don't think it is a waste of time. In the first 45 seconds itself, not that you have to write it, have it in your mind. Think in your mind, like what dimensions I am going to write. What dimensions I am going to write. Be very, very clear about it. What dimensions I am going to write. Then that will give a proper direction to your answer. That will give a proper direction to your answer, and the chances of getting definitely highest possible scores will be there only if you identify all the relevant dimensions, isn't it? You start off, put one dimension that is good dimension, then put another dimension which is not related to the demand of the question, but write it for almost half page, then write one more dimension which is very good. You have already wasted half page and some time also on it. You should have simply skipped it, or you should have relegated it to a level of a ray diagram. But you have unnecessarily overemphasized it and you have already written a ray diagram on it. Not correct, isn't it? So don't think it's a waste of time even in the first 45 seconds or even 1 minute also, if you identify the most relevant dimensions. And let me tell you, even for attempting those unfamiliar questions, some questions are unfamiliar to you. You may not be familiar with those questions. Even with those unfamiliar questions, it's not difficult to identify dimensions, isn't it? Question topic is very new to you. Maybe you cannot write a good introduction because you don't know the topic itself. Maybe you cannot write a good conclusion, but at least you know what the body can be. So at least if examiner sees all the headings, he would think, okay, he tried to crack the code and he is trying to build the content for it. Let me give him at least 2 marks for the effort he has put. So even for the unfamiliar question, identifying the dimensions would do this job of saving grace for you. Yeah, it will really work that way. It will help you to identify the relevant, getting at least minimum scores. So get into the skill of identifying all the relevant dimensions. It will not come in a day or two. It requires a lot of practice, a lot of discipline, a lot of consistency. And that's what now, hereafter, anytime you are reading any content, don't read it passively. Ask yourself two questions. Is there any mains question in this? Is there any mains question in this? And if there are any, if you're reading some points, where can I use these points for any question? If you are not getting immediately the sense of what kind of question can be framed from this, or where can I use this point which I am reading now, then you may not be reading things which are actually important for the exam. That is one possibility. Other possibility, you are still not into the, actually seriously understanding the demand of the mains examination. Hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say. This is very, very important. Reading anything, ask yourself the question, am I am I capable of identifying what mains question is there in this? Or am I aware what type of fodder points are there in this? What type of fodder points are there in this? So if you can do this effectively, it automatically contributes to identification of dimensions, then definitely you will write most relevant answer and you will score high. See why students, in spite of their best possible efforts, students who are writing mains, they end up getting 80s, 75s, 85s. It is because they think they have written a good answer, but in reality, they may not have written a good answer which is relevant to the demand of the question. At least they would have spoiled 1/4 of the question or half of the question. Rest of the half they would have written well. But only when you write a complete answer, you will get maximum scores. Got my point now? Yes. Now let's say mob lynching and vigilante violence. So mob lynching and vigilante violence in a socio-political framework is linked to disrespect for an inclusive social order, rising intolerance, and growing polarization. Analyze. Suggest some measures to curb incidents of mob lynching. So what is the core theme here? What is the core theme? Core theme is simple. Mob lynching and vigilante violence is the, of course, both are closely related to each other. We cannot separate each other. So identify points are more or less the same for both mob lynching and vigilante violence. So core theme is that. So what are the possible dimensions here? So one, introduction. Then okay, factors responsible for increasing incidents of mob lynching and vigilante violence. Then ah, Yeah. No, that's what. Is that having that stature of keeping as a heading the point you are mentioning? Can I keep it as a heading? Demand. Yeah. Yeah. Mm, mm, mm. Polarizing tendency. That's what I'm trying to say is core theme is mob lynching and vigilante violence. So why not we directly identify factors responsible for the growth of mob lynching and vigilante violence? One of the point is polarization. Political polarization is one component of it. Isn't it? Then one dimension can be what are the possible consequences? Hmm. Ah, that's what. Is it capable of going for a separate heading? Can I keep one heading, separate heading for that? That's what. Identifying the dimensions is essentially this. So what would be the consequences that would flow, consequences of mob lynching or vigilante violence? In the consequences, all the points which you guys have mentioned, we can write the consequences. Ah, ah. Now we will write the same point. In the factors responsible, I'll write that point. This is a vicious cycle. Mob lynching, moral policing, vigilante violence, all these are nothing but the factors responsible. Then consequences. If the society is having vigilante violence, if the society is having mob lynching, what would be the consequences on the society? Consequences on the society would be like this: social disharmony will be there, investment climate will get disturbed, and yes, all these things, social cleavages, social conflict, something like that you will write. These are the consequences. Then one more point, you can write measures to be taken. So 5, 6 points under factors responsible, 3, 4 points under possible consequences of mob lynching and vigilante violence. And yeah, writing one more point and measures to be taken to address the problem of mob lynching and vigilante violence. Here, one possibility is that students make. I'm coming to that. Definitely. Exactly. Exactly. So, this is one question wherein in introduction, if you want, you can elaborate the statement. You can elaborate the statement in the introduction itself. Write a little bit lengthy introduction. You can say, right, see, inclusive social order, write one example how any recent incident of mob lynching has spoiled the inclusive social order. Write one example how one recent example of how people are becoming increasingly intolerant. One example of how political polarization is happening. So in 3/4, you have addressed the statement that itself conveys to the examiner that he is very much aware of the developing trends, current trends. Then rest of the question is a proper theme based discussion. Factors responsible. I'll be addressing the themes, not examples. I'm addressing the themes. Then consequences. I'm addressing the themes. Then measures to be taken, specific measures to be taken. That is how you can build an answer. Are you guys understanding what I'm trying to say? Is that clear? Upesh, is that clear? Yeah. It's as simple as that. Identifying the most relevant dimensions and writing points within the dimensions. As I've used this, I'll again explain with an example. Many students have this tendency to assume that example is the answer. Don't write examples directly. Examples should follow a theme. Directly writing an example will not give. You must be thinking what I'm talking. A very simple example I'll tell. Say, for instance, you're writing a question on malnutrition. You're writing a question on malnutrition. In writing the points, measures to be taken to address the problem of malnutrition, you should not write like Say in some states, in Kerala, a district collector has distributed food coupons, which has led to improvement of the malnourishment. No, that's not the way it is supposed to be written. Governance innovations with adequate reforms backed by funding can contribute to improvement of malnutrition. Is the theme. Then, for example, in Kerala, a district collector, because what is the theme there? It's a governance innovation or a governance reform or an administrative innovation. So you should write the theme first, followed by the example. Of course, senior aspirants must be already aware of this, but beginners do this mistake very often. They write directly examples and think that that is related to the demand of the question. No, themes first should be followed by example. It is very much applicable even in the case of essay also. Even in case of essays also, you should write the theme first. You should then follow it up with example. Don't directly write the examples first. This is something very basic, should not be missed. Okay? Yes. So introduction can be with recent case study or explaining the concept of mob lynching or substantiating the statement. Substantiating the statement. Then factors responsible for the growth of mob lynching. Impacts of growth in mob lynching and vigilante violence. Measures to control the incidents or way forward. And a very brief conclusion. Very brief conclusion. As simple as that. Right? So here A, B, C, D, E are called dimensions. Okay? Did you guys understand what exactly are dimensions here? Yes. Look at this question. A rapid, sustainable, and durable rural economic transformation is the need of the hour. Identify various challenges in realization of this vision. Suggest some innovative solutions to accomplish intended objective. That is a question. So dimension introduction is taken care. Then he has managed to quickly write components of rural economy. That makes sense, right? I'm talking about rural economic transformation, and one good dimension on what are actually the components of rural economy. It made a lot of sense for me. You understood? Then he went on to discuss challenges, possible challenges. He tried to go it sector wise. That I'll come to that structural aspect also. Agriculture and allied activities, industries like that, human resources, infrastructure, services. Look how comprehensively all the aspects are addressed. Then solutions. He could have been like it was little overemphasis of writing in ray diagrams and all. Maybe he could have written it like an answer also. But what about dimension? All the dimensions I have seen here. So examiner will look for dimensions. Okay, yes, all the dimensions which are expected from him are covered. At least half marks are assured for you there. Then depending on the quality of the content, you will get that extra 1.5 mark or whatever it is. How, like, it's very comprehensive. So here it's possible that he'll get minimum of more than half mark. Half marks, not half mark, more than half marks. So I think by this time, what dimensions are should be clear to you. So this forms the core component of the question. Once you are or you have mastered the art of identifying dimensions, half of your answer writing practice is done. Say it's a bad day. You don't feel like writing answers. Of course, there should not be bad days at all. Worst case scenario, there is a bad day. At least keep question papers before you. Test series papers, whatever last year's or present years. Read the question, identify the dimensions. So that you are inclined to, so that you are not deviated from the answer writing practice. That important is this component of identifying dimensions. Luckily, all the test series, whoever gives the question papers, they'll identify these dimensions for you. So it will be easy for you to understand what they are. Got it? Yes. Next comes this another very important component, structuring the answer. This is one thing which is very conveniently ignored by many of the students. And the reason they tell for this is, will we have time? In 11 minutes time, identifying dimensions itself is a big thing. Writing an introduction is a big thing. Writing a conclusion is a big thing. Then I have to innovate upon, I have to bring flow charts, diagrams, all these things. Where do I have time for structuring the answer again? Structuring means within a dimension, within the limited time you have, you should also know how to structure your answer. Structuring and prioritization is very important, ma. Otherwise, it will end up as a random content. And this is something very difficult. It will not definitely come in a day or two. This also comes with a lot of practice. It's not that you aren't aware what is structuring is. The moment I show you the example, you will understand, okay, this is structuring and this is what we are reading from our current affairs material from long time. But we have not made it a point to bring it in our answers. Why not you bring in your answers? That brings a lot of clarity in your writing of answers. See, another essential ingredient in answer writing, slightly difficult to begin with. Yes, with practice, you will learn to write a good structure for an answer. It enhances the visibility of your answers and it will presentation skills. It will definitely improve the presentation skills. Look here. This aspirant has diligently structured her answer both to enhance visibility and amplify the content quality. The importance of high value commodity. So this is the dimension. Question is something related to high value commodities. What are high value commodities? That is the question. Look, potential income growth. You could have simply written a point like income growth, something on income growth. No, this makes more sense, right? Potential income growth balances food demand, controls inflation, economic growth. So even if examiner is lazy to read the content you have written, just by looking at this, okay, let me give scores. Because he has addressed all the relevant points. Okay, high value commodities have potential for income growth. High value commodities are balancing food demands. High value commodities are controlling inflation. High value commodities are contributing to economic growth. Done. This takes care of another extra 1 mark for you. If by identifying the dimensions you have reached that half mark score, extra half to extra 1 mark is taken care if you are structuring your answer properly. By this time, it should be very clear to you guys that you should stop running after the content. Not giving you any jugad or shortcuts, I am saying. Of course, content is important, but not as important as you guys think and waste your time just reading the content, ignoring answer writing. If these basics are taken care, all those who are getting ranks are the ones who have as much content as you. Some of your friends would have got into service, you would have been aware. And you also would have been aware that I am reading the same books he is reading. I am as much knowledgeable as he is. And I know everything what he also knows. Then why am I not getting it? Answer is simple. He must be taking this answer writing seriously. He would have been ensuring that all these things actually get replicated in his answers. As simple as it. And definitely to begin with, it might be slightly difficult for you to structure an answer properly. But once you start doing this, it will definitely happen. Okay. Yes. Look, one more question. Yeah, I think same thing. Potential income growth, balancing food demand, controls inflation, economic growth, export boost, ensures food security. Right? So what all we have discussed in now? Reading the question 5 times, writing a good, identifying the relevant dimensions, and structuring the answer properly. And half of you would be already aware of this. Isn't it? You already know this. But the real problem comes when it comes to execution. Because it's not just like that. It will come only with a lot of practice. Isn't it? Yes. Then this component, because we have to stand out, and we have to score more when compared to other students because it's a relative performance, means examination. Let's work on this component, innovations in answer writing. Innovations in answer writing means hereafter, whenever you are writing answers or practicing answer writing, give 15 seconds time. Pass for a while. First 45 seconds for understanding the question, identifying the dimensions, or maybe 30 seconds, 40 seconds for this. 15 seconds dedicatedly for innovating the answer. 15 seconds dedicatedly for innovating the answer. Keep it deliberately, voluntarily. How can I innovate this answer? How get that extra half mark or extra 1 mark? Because everybody else is reading the same books I am reading. Everybody is working as hard as I am. Then I should stand out. how can I stand out? There is only one way. I have to slightly improvise upon. I have to innovate. I have to bring something extra into my answer so it grabs the attention of the examiner and he would want to give me that half extra half mark in 10 questions or 14 questions. You are 7 to 8 marks ahead of your teacher. In 4 exams, you are around 35 to 40 marks ahead of your competitor. That's sufficient for you. That is sufficient to determine whether you will be in top 100, you will be in top 400, or you will be in the top 700, or you will just end up with an interview call. This makes all the difference. Do this consciously, do this purposively. 15 seconds, I'll think only on how to innovate the answer. You must be thinking, is it practical in that stressed mindset? I have written these many mains, and still after writing these many mains, how could I dedicatedly give time, 15 seconds time for innovating? Is it practical? It's very much practical. You have not just tried to implement it. People do this. Many people do this. But think consciously, think purposively. Tell yourself, okay, 15 seconds, I'll allocate for innovating answer. That can be anything. Sometimes you will get the weirdest idea. Who knows? That idea might click like anything. Maybe a reference to a movie, a reference to a sporting event, a reference to a current event, something of that sort, or something in your personal life which you want to tell the examiner without revealing your identity. Anything may click, ma. See why? That's the reason. Something very interesting I have observed. Some students who write very good essays end up writing dumb answers in mains. Did you ever observe? I've seen this students doing. Because in essays, they are brainstorming, right? People are spending around, on each essay, they are spending around 40, 45 minutes or at least 30 to 35 minutes on brainstorming. So when they're doing brainstorming, they're thinking consciously, they're thinking purposively and intently and trying to develop the content then and there. But in mains, we don't do that. It's like on the go. The moment exam starts, it's like stop switching off the brain and just writing the answer. And when you switch off the brain, you can imagine the quality of the answer. As simple as that. No, that should not happen. You should be fully aware. At least the first 1 minute of writing the answer, you should be fully aware what I am going to write, how much I will write, where to restrain myself. Why am I going overboard and writing things which are not necessary? Ask yourself. Then yes, that 15 minutes or 20 seconds of time on how to innovate. How should I stand out? That so-called innovation will also tell you, rather than writing 6, 7 points, lengthy points, which otherwise are not necessary, maybe one good ray diagram would solve the purpose for me. You're also saving time. So next unfamiliar question, you are giving more time and you are getting marks even for that unfamiliar question also, because now you have given it time. Even the unfamiliar questions, when you apply mind, they will start giving out answers for you. It happens. Students who have written mains would have already faced this. And when you are writing your test series tomorrow, you will also face this. Don't, that's the reason I tell students, if you are writing a test series for 3 hours, write it exactly for 3 hours or write it for 2 hours 50 minutes. Don't write in a luxurious way. Write it. Some students tell this. The first question I ask the moment they come to me with test papers, how much time you have taken? They'll tell 3 hours 20 minutes, 3 hours 10 minutes. Do you have that luxury in the main? Huh? You have only 2 hours 55 minutes. 5 minutes for you will go for washroom one time, two time. That will eat away 2-3 minutes time. Then that filling, bubbling will take 1-2 minutes of time. So ideally, you are supposed to practice for 2 hours 50 minutes. You are practicing for 3 hours 10 minutes, 3 hours 20 minutes. Means half an hour luxury. You are buying yourself. Who is giving you that? We don't have that right. We are demanding that. Not at all. It's not like that. So practice for 2 hours 50 minutes. That's totally fine. Or practice for 2 hours 55 minutes if you think it's impractical. But don't do, if you're writing, write it only for 3 hours strictly, not even 1 minute, not even 1 second extra. This is something very, very basic, especially I know some of you will subscribe to the test series and you will start writing tests, but don't do it like in a luxurious space. I want to complete the paper, so I have done for 3 hours 30 minutes. Who asked you to complete the paper? Let's be honest. You could not complete the paper, you have not read the topic, or you don't know how to complete the topic on time. Accept it, accept the reality, and write it only for 3 hours. Or 2 hours 55 minutes is the ideal thing I suggest. Okay, to work on this innovation, I have just confined myself to very few things, but innovation is boundless, limitless. Each one of you have unique capacity to innovate your answers. You can come up with ray diagrams, you can come up with flow charts, it can be pie diagram, it can be bar diagram, whatever it, simple illustration, diagrams, practice it. Don't tell that I'm not good at drawing, I'm not good at, these are all complaints. These excuses are not accepted. When somebody else is drawing, what's stopping you from drawing? They're practicing, they're doing, you are not practicing, you are not doing. It's as simple as. If somebody has practiced or managed to draw a world map in 30 seconds time, he deserves better scores than you. It's as simple as that. Because he has practiced to quickly draw a world map in 35 seconds, 40 seconds, he'll definitely be awarded 1 mark more than what you are getting. And he also has quickly, he ensured that came to his mind that I have to draw a diagram here, and he ensured that it is replicated. He'll be appreciated. He'll get extra mark. So these are not excuses. If you're not good at diagram, don't tell this to anyone. You practice drawing diagrams because everybody else is doing, you have to do it. There is no other option. In fact, you have to do it better than everybody else doing it so that you will get that more marks, or you will get a cutting edge when compared to other aspirants. As simple as that. Start practicing diagrams. And whenever you are reading content from websites, online, internet, you do a lot of internet reading, I mean, apart from your regular books, you, because of this curiosity, especially students who have come to that level of mains or who are in the mains level of preparation, they have this natural urge, natural curiosity to go deeper and read from different sources. There you would have been seeing different types of images, different types of illustrations, representations, but we won't identify that, yes, this is something which I can replicate in my answers. You're understanding what I'm trying to say? You will not take it seriously. You will just see it and you will be just busy reading the content. But somebody who has written the content, he also would be consciously, he has done that with a purpose. You identify the purpose with which he has done and you try to replicate the same in your answers. It's something very important. Don't take it lightly. Otherwise, like the people come and ask me like how to improve answers. How to improve answers means you have not thought about it. Even if somebody tells you 100 times, you will not get into it unless you have applied your mind on voluntarily improving your writing of your answer. It's this innovation, something very, very important, especially those who are going for mains this year. Make it a point, ensure that you work on this aspect. You work on this aspect. When you are writing your test series tomorrow, tell yourself that 15 seconds I am going to spend on how to innovate my answers. Got my point? Yes. Then, of course, quotations, quotes, isn't it? You would have seen, right? This year I've seen one topper's copy. He is writing quotes just like that. It's such an ease they are getting quotes. I can imagine the amount of practice he would have done. Otherwise, getting quotes that easily is not that, it's insane. He would have done a lot of work for it. It's as simple as that. Have 300 quotations or at least 200 quotations. Prepare audio files with your own voice. Listen to that audio files as many times as you can. You're walking, you're jogging, listen to that. Or you don't feel like reading anything, you're just strolling around. Listen to that. Rather than gossiping, wasting time at the chai shop, you have chai. Chai break is very much essential. Listen to it. Or you don't feel like reading anything, just feel like taking rest. Lay down and listen to it. Listen to it as many times as you can, isn't it? There are certain things which we would have learned in our school level, we will not forget even today. Why? Because why we all remember the so-called tables 1 to 20. They made us practice it so many times that we never forget it in the life. Why not we do the same thing here? It may sound childish, but this is what, if you want to stand out, you are supposed to do certain things. Make an audio file. You know these things you will definitely forget, isn't it? When you know there are certain things which you will definitely forget, then why not you give that extra effort to remember them? You can't give excuses that I am not good at I'm good only at analysis. I'm good only in critical thinking, but I'm not good at memory. No, these are all excuses. If you're not good at memory, don't prepare for UPSC exam. UPSC exam also demands a lot of memory also, right? Yeah. I'm an IITian, I'm not good at memory. No. Even if there are other IITians who are also having good memory. So nothing, there are certain things which are necessary for this examination. Let's accept it. Let's be honest and practice them as simple as. Yes. Quotations, quotes also something very, very important. Yes. So this thing actually I've taken it from internet. It's not written by my student. Some student has written it on a good flow diagram. See, combustion of fossil fuels, increase in greenhouse gases, global warming, climatic change, melting of glaciers, something of that sort. Of course, our students write better flow diagrams. This one I have taken it long back. So flow diagram, a good flow diagram, it would have made more sense rather than writing the entire content. Of course, he has taken little more space. You should not have taken that space. In just 1/5 of the page, you can draw that flow chart. And the same content which you want to express in half page, you can confine it to 1/5 page. So in the less space, less time, bringing more content to the examiner is worth it. Is very much worth it. Got it? Yes. Another good example. Look at this illustrative diagram. Something related to disaster management, mitigation, preparedness, recovery, response. Actually, this student is running short of time, but somehow think she has to write it in the limited time. I asked her in how much time you could write this. She said she has completed on time. Then this is the reason. How she could have completed on time? All the points are there. If you cross check, in case of recovery or in case of mitigation, in case of preparedness, in case of response, all the relevant points are there. Of course, it is not to be done every time, but you are facing short of time and space, but still you have some content to write, which you want to show to the examiner. Take this route. You will get the same scores like you are getting for your best answer also. Not that this is to be done every time, but yes, this is one good way. Got it? Then good illustrative diagram, right? Yes. Have a simple ray diagram quickly captured one of the non-core dimension of the question. It would definitely add value. This point, yeah, did I tell you? Core dimension, non-core dimension. You have to understand this difference between what is a core dimension and what is a non-core dimension. See, non-core dimension is essentially this. It may not be directly related to the demand of the question. Means it may not have direct relevance to the core theme. Still, non-core dimension would also add value, some value to the answer. So if you are somebody who have good answer writing speed, it is totally fine even if you write a non-core dimension in your answer. But don't try to overemphasize it. If you take 1/2 page or 1 full page for non-core dimension, you are losing time and space. I know certain things when I'm telling people who have not started writing answers would have been already, things will be like very hazy, and that's the reason I tell. Only when you start writing answers, you'll understand what is a core dimension, what is a non-core dimension, what is a dimension, what is structuring, what is innovation. Only who have gone through the pain of answer writing would know or would make more sense of what I'm actually telling here. Some of you who have not even started writing answers may definitely, of course, people like Sai who are writing consistently for last 1 year, you should better understand like what is core dimension, what is a non-core dimension, isn't it? You're getting a sense because in your answers, I keep observing sometimes you tend to write things which is not the demand of the question, and you tend to overemphasize things which is not the demand of the question. So we have to somehow restrain ourselves. The moment you identify that it is a non-core dimension, don't overemphasize it. You can write it. Let's say in this question, briefly explain the importance of high value commodities in the context of enhancing agricultural incomes in India. Suggest some measures to improve their share in the production. Challenges in high value commodity production actually is not the demand of this question, because the demand of the question talks about importance and measures. That would be fine. It's not necessary to overemphasize on the challenges part. And maybe if it's a 10 marker, unnecessary space will not be there, time will not be there. Quickly present challenges. Look, Done. All the points are identified. Got my point? So identify the difference between core dimensions and non-core dimensions. Restrain yourself from overemphasizing or being overwriting on non-core dimensions. Got it? Yes. Then using right quote at the right place makes a lot of sense. So read here. I think I should have included the question for you to make a better sense, but somehow I felt the quote here is very relevant. We can evade reality, but we cannot evade the consequences of evading reality. And this quote has come up in a question on, it's a corporate governance, question on corporate governance, and yeah, ethical and corporate governance. And the quote has come very timely. I'll show you more quotes. And then if you're in my Telegram channel, answer writing platform, whenever some students write good quotes, I'll show it for you. So like this, some students write very good quotes, which are very much relevant to the demand of the question. You're getting a sense of what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Then this low hanging fruit, which will definitely ensure that you get half mark extra in every single answer you write, but very carelessly taken for granted, is underlining of the answers. It will hardly take 10 to 15 seconds for underlining the answer. Very serious aspirants, hardworking, knows to write good answers, have good content, still end up doing this, not underlining. Show the examiner. Don't think examiner has lot of time to evaluate your answer. Here, because you are paying somebody, they have time to write in detail for you everything. No, their examiner need not write anything on your answer. He'll just do this tick, tick, tick. And only if he finds it as something exciting, something which stands out, he'll give marks. Otherwise, he won't even give marks. Show it. You underline it and show him, this is what I have written. Read in my answer. Somebody, they'll write brilliant points, very, very good points that will get buried in the flow of their answer. What's the point? If you are writing something which is of extraordinary quality, let that be visibly presented. Why are we undermining its significance? Let that be shown, let that be seen. Kharif yields, Rabi yields, like economic survey 2017-18, underline that. Such an important fact she has written. Let that be underlined. Hereafter, never ever forget underlining the ideas. It hardly takes 10 to 15 seconds of your time, but believe me, you will start improving your scores the moment you start underlining your answers. Don't think it's a waste of time. If you put for entire examination, how much time it will take? 20 questions, 20 into 20 seconds. How many? Say 400 seconds. 400 seconds transforms to hardly roughly 5 to 7 minutes. Then what? We can't afford that 5 to 7 minutes. That 5 to 7 minutes will definitely fetch you extra 10 marks, believe me. If not 10 marks, at least 8 to 10 marks will fetch you. Simple thing, right? Such a low hanging fruit. Need not use your brain also. Because already you have used your brain and you know which are the important points. And just underline it. And one more thing, it also will serve as a break for you. When you are in that rigorous thing of writing answers, it's a less strenuous effort, right? Underlining is a less. So you will get that required break for you to move to the next answer. It will prepare you for your next answer. Got it? Yes. Then writing in points format. This is also one thing taken for granted. Here, I'm not encouraging that everything you have to write only in point format. Some people are also comfortable in writing paragraphs. Some people are comfortable in writing in points format. And you should have that discernibility of which answers to write in points format, which answers to write in paragraphs. It's not possible for me to tell this kind of questions you should write in points format, this kind of, some questions are very obvious. For them, writing in points format will save you a lot of time and space and effort. You write in answers. You write in points format, underline it, examiner will see it, award marks. For some questions, maybe you have to analyze it. There you can write it in small paragraph, like you write an essay, small sized paragraph. So that discernibility you will develop on your own. It's not possible for somebody explaining. If I can explain all these things, I also should have been in a position to explain that, but it's not practical and feasible to tell me for this particular question you have to write in point format, for this particular question you have to write in paragraph, but not that dogmatical adhere to only one style. Both styles are equally valid. Writing in paragraph format also is equally valid, but it depends on the demand of the question. Understand the demand of the question and then think about writing in the points. Got my point? Yes. So look, this aspirant, how carefully she has written status of implementation of Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Dimension identified, then gains of Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Structuring also is taken care. Then, of course, in here, point 1, in 1 also she has written not just 1, 1, 1, 2, 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, 2.1a, 2.1. This is a little difficult, I know, it's not easy for everyone. Yes, but there are students who are doing this actually. Some students with the practice, I asked this student how much time he has taken. He said he has exceeded the time, but if not 2.1a, 2.1b, at least write on 2, 3. That much of effort will definitely be appreciated. Okay. Yes. Right. Then here comes the last and very important but most neglected component in answer writing, that is writing a conclusion. It is suggested to write a conclusion for most of the topics except those answers where you are already ending with an elaborate way forward. Even in above case, there is no hard and fast rule that you should not conclude if you think answer deserves a concluding remark. Conclusions often are forgotten or taken lightly. Of course, these days, because of answer writing practice, students are writing conclusions. Same thing applicable for conclusion also. It should be simple, it should be clear, it should be specific, and it should be relevant to the demand of the question. Don't write the cliched conclusions. We are bored of seeing those conclusions of sustainable development goals, $5 trillion economy, whatever, that another doubling of farm income. Why every question does it not have its own worth, self-worth? It would have, right? Somebody would have told, some topper or somewhere you would have seen that this is how you are supposed to write a conclusion, and you end up writing the same. If you're not getting if you're getting not getting good ideas, think over it. Spend some time on writing conclusions. Just like I said I'll make you guys to practice introductions. I also ensure that I'll practice conclusions. I'll ensure students to practice conclusions. Practicing conclusions is something very important. Keep practicing them and observing the conclusions. Just like I've told you have to observe the introductions, start observing the conclusions also. Keep observing the conclusions. The more conclusions you observe, the closer you are to the concluding the answer. Some questions where you must be writing a very elaborate way forward. You will be writing way forward as one of the dimension. There already you would have been running short of time and space. If you want, you can skip the conclusion, because the way forward is a kind of concluding remark. You can escape it. But even if such questions, if sometimes you deserve that, it would be good. If you have something still to tell the examiner, do not hesitate. You can definitely write a conclusion. Yes. Right. So what do you understand by the concept of interactive learning and adaptive learning? Discuss their importance in the process of learning. This is one question I have framed. Look at the conclusion. Both adaptive learning and interactive learning have their own importance in the process of learning. Learning is a process which shapes a personality, a future citizen, and hence it should focus on all-round development of the student. Something relevant to the demand of the question. I don't say it's a great conclusion, but yes, it is definitely relevant to the demand of the question. What is Global Livability Index? Discuss the significance of indicators like Global Livability Index in the context of urbanization happening at breakneck speed. So as India is urbanizing at historically high rates, urban governance should be given top priority. City government should be empowered to attend to areas of critical concern. Urban policies and schemes should ensure a quality of life to people and make the urban areas more livable and sustainable. So maybe here the aspirant want to conclude in the concluding remarks, he want to emphasize the importance of the urban governance reforms in the city governments for livability. So that's what he chose to conclude. You can conclude otherwise in much more broader way also, but have some conclusion which is specific to the demand of the question. Right? So few more conclusions you can go through. Yes. And this point should not ignore. Conclusion should be optimistic, futuristic, and should summarize the essence of the topic. They should be optimistic, they should be futuristic, and they should summarize the essence of the topic. The essence of the topic should be touched upon by the conclusion. Somewhere, like the same example I've been giving, nowhere related to the core theme, some random, doubling the farm income or $1 5 trillion economy, it may not be related to the core theme. Somehow the core theme should again be re-emphasized. The re-emphasizing or reinforcing of the core theme should be ensured in the conclusion. So that's like it's a proper it's like proper conclusion. Isn't it? That's how in the climax, isn't it? Recently I've seen one movie that forgot the name of the movie, Ravi Teja's movie. Movie starts with one mango, nail, something, and in the end again they'll try, like most of the Rajamouli movies also, if you guys have observed, whatever is there in introduction again will come up in the conclusion and will surprise us. Even we would have forgotten, oh, this guy has already, even that recent movie Andhadhun I have seen in Telugu, it has come up as with some other name. Even there also something there in introduction, he'll again bring us back to the same thing in the conclusion, that keeps us more intriguing. So examiner will think, oh, something he has spoken about in the introduction, again he has managed to bring it back in the conclusion. Look how intelligent he is in writing his answers, how convincing he is, and how he is trying to write a compelling answer to grab the attention. He will, some good students will be doing this. Most of us will be in that stress of completing the answer on time. We end up not taking seriously these kind of, the impact these kind of innovations will leave on the impression of the exam. Surprise him with these kind of innovations. He has to give you marks. Has to give you marks. But we spend most of our time on just passively building the content, and end up ignoring on improving our presentation skills. Please don't do that. Yes. So above 7 ideas must be constantly reverberating in your mind. Without adherence to above 7 ideas, do not expect to score high in your mains examination. Simple mantra. Yes. RQ5, IDIS, IUP should be constantly running in your mind. Read question 5 times. Write a good introduction. Write or identify as many relevant dimensions. Write a good structure. Keep innovating, underlining the important points and writing in a points format. Okay, right? Possible. Do this in next 24 hours 100 times. Yes, definitely you will not forget when you are writing your answers next time, right? So yes, that's it for now. I just want to show one question. I think, yeah, this question. Ashwant has written it. This year he got 94th rank, right? Look at that answer. Religious conversions through marriage is a tricky issue and may have many unforeseen consequences in the future of Indian society. Critically analyze. What is the question? I think I framed this question. Religious conversions through marriage is a tricky issue and may have many unforeseen consequences in the future of Indian society. Critically analyze the statement. So what is the core theme? Core theme is religious conversions. It's easy to identify the core theme. So let's see what could be the introduction. See the introduction. As a nation built upon the ideals of secularism, liberty, and freedom, India provides opportunity for couples from different faiths to marry each other, and the same was legalized through Special Marriages Act. Some introduction which is related to, talking about India's secular credentials and the place of marriage in the Indian society is definitely relevant. It's not very good, but definitely it is relevant. Definitely relevant to the demand of the question. Then issues with religious conversions through marriage. That's a very relevant dimension, right? Because why are we talking about religious conversions now in the context of marriage? Because it is causing some social issues. Because it is causing some social issues, we have taken this. So issues with religious conversions through marriage. So it has all these issues. Forceful conversion of vulnerable women by husband is one issue. Then radicalization and using it as an opportunity to further a faith by increasing population is one possible issue. Then increasing suspicion among people. This might lead to suspicion among people. That could be one dimension. And this dimension, need of conversion of religion after marriage. It is an analysis. I think need is not appropriate. Maybe something else would have sounded better. Yeah, this dimension is not so significant, the need of conversion of religion after marriage, but something like relevance of conversion or necessity of conversion, something of that sort would have been relevant. Then measures to ensure no misuse of conversion. This is very, very important. And also observe the quality of the points in the measures. See, conversion by force should be stopped by instituting a mechanism when a magistrate requires the statement of couple about their free will. It's a very good point. Then, availability of counseling session and legal help to the couple. Very practical, very simple, isn't it? Then, promote secularism through common festivals, interfaith colonies, etc. Promoting the idea of secularism. Then ensure sufficient vigilance so that law and order issues does not occur. Simple suggestions, but very relevant dimension. 4 simple points. Maybe he should have underlined also. It should have been much better. But yes, for this definitely half marks are definitely ensured because introduction is good. All the dimensions, relevant dimensions are identified. Points are properly mentioned. Then conclusion, let's see. As guaranteed by Article 26 of the Constitution. Don't you think it is directly related to the demand of the question? Article 26. Every person has a right to preach, propagate, confer any religion, but there is no right of conversion. Free will of the couple should be ensured before religious conversion occurs. Personal freedom should be balanced with the need of ensuring secular, peaceful society. That's it. So it will automatically take care. So good introduction, good conclusion, relevant dimensions, points format, sensible points in the way forward. These are all the things which you are supposed to do to get what you're actually aspiring for. This is as simple as that, but as we don't practice adequately, we are, struggling it to write good answers. That's it. Let me not give too many inputs and confuse you. That also is not correct. And I'm that person who don't believe in non-specific inputs. I believe in specific inputs because each of you have your own temperament. Each of you have your own style of answer writing. These are just fundamentals. How you will improve upon, it's like boundless. You can write the best possible answer, which anybody has never thought of writing also. And yes, that comes only with practice and commitment. Yes. So that's it from my side for today's class. Initially, the plans were to have a workshop today itself, but I thought it will take some time for you to sink in those ideas. If your time permits, try to come back again next week. I'll announce in the same group. Then we will do a workshop. It will make more sense because this so-called RQ5, IDP, whatever it is, it has to sink in your mind and do that practice for this whole week. The next week, try to attend the workshop. And maybe Kalyan would have announced we are launching one essay test series, and Kalyan will be personally handling it. I'll also be part of the essay test series. He's also evaluating it, and we are also launching one GS answer writing program. It's not a test series. If you are in Hyderabad, or even if it's online, every day evening 7 to 8, you will be writing the test, and 8 to 9, 9:30, whatever it is, will be the test discussion. And we are a team of members like me, Fazal, Kalyan, and Varsha, and I think 6, 7 people are collaborating. Swati Agarwal, ethics. So all of us are collaborating and trying to do this for students of Hyderabad. And it's also available online. If you want, you can subscribe to that module. So that's it from my side. And I'll be available here for some more time. If you have any doubts, you can come on. Thank you.